and upon today is the traditional territory of the Attawattaran, Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Lenape peoples who have longstanding relationships to the land, water, and region of southwestern Ontario. The local First Nations communities of this area include the Chippewa of the Thames First Nation, Oneida Nation of the Thames First Nation, and Munsee Delaware Nation. We acknowledge the treaties that are specific to this treaty area. That is Treaty 2, the McKee Purchase, Treaty 3, Between the Lakes Purchase, Treaty 6, London Township Purchase, Treaty 21, Longwoods Purchase, and Treaty 29, Huron Tract Purchase. We value the significant contributions, both in the past and the present, of local and regional First Nations of Turtle Island. We acknowledge historic and ongoing injustices that Indigenous peoples endure in Canada, and we affirm our commitment to honoring Indigenous voices, nations, and cultures, and to moving forward in a spirit of reconciliation and respect. Before I start the meeting and ask for pecuniary interests, I do have a couple of announcements that I want to make today. The first one is that this week is National Accessibility Week, and this year's theme is Forward Together, Accessibility and Inclusion for All, which encourage us to unite our efforts in making Middlesex County and all of Canada a barrier-free place for everyone. Let's continue to work together to promote accessibility and inclusivity in our community. Red Shirt Day of Action for Accessibility and Inclusion is tomorrow, Wednesday, May 29th. On this day, I would encourage all of you to wear red to show support for individuals with disabilities and their families, celebrate their achievements, and pledge to help create a fully accessible and inclusive society. Okay, and number two, it is my very, very great honor just to mention some of our staff members. And it was yesterday, I think, that it was yesterday that the Honorable Edith Dumont, Lieutenant Governor of Ontario, and the Honorable Sylvia Jones, Deputy Premier and Minister of Health, presented awards to 11 paramedics in Ontario, one of whom is David Jeffries, who is a paramedic from the London Middlesex Paramedic Service. On August 14th, 2019, paramedic David Jeffries and his partner responded to a call after a vehicle crashed into a home. At the scene, a damaged gas line quickly ignited, causing a massive explosion destroying several homes and injuring almost everyone present. Despite the fiery, debris-filled scene, paramedic Jeffries stayed cool under pressure to triage, treat, and transport the police and fire personnel who were injured in that blast. As a result of their heroic actions, all 6 responders and 1 civilian received medical attention for their injuries and survived. So we just want to acknowledge the work of our paramedics and paramedic David Jeffries in particular. They're highly trained professional people, but the dedication to service and their bravery is unparalleled. So I just wanted to highlight that achievement today and express our deepest gratitude to all of the first responders that serve on our paramedic service. And last but not least, I received a letter last week, late last week, and it comes from Peter Neufeld, who is the president of the Ontario Municipal Administrators Association. And it said that at a recent workshop in Niagara-on-the-Lake, he had the pleasure of recognizing Mr. Bill Rayburn with the OMAA Long Service Recognition Award. And this award recognizes Bill's 30 years of service and is an acknowledgement of his hard work and dedication to the proud profession of an Ontario CAO. So on behalf of the board of directors who've already extended their greetings for our colleagues around the horseshoe and the staff here, I want to extend our sincere congratulations on your long-term service and dedication to the county. So there we go. Okay. And that's a hat trick and I can move on. Okay, so now provisions of disclosure of pecuniary interest. I do have one, but I'll look to others. Is there anyone? Yes, go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Warden. I actually have 2 conflicts. And they're for items 9.D.36 and 9.D.37. The first one is the uncontested official plan amendment for Strathroy Caradoc. And the other one is the final approval of the South Winds development in Middlesex Center. And my conflict is I have a family member that worked on the engineering for both projects.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll move now to the approval of the agenda. The motion is that the agenda be approved and as presented. Could I have a mover, please? Councillor Grantham, Councillor Smiber, thank you. All in favor? And that is carried. Okay. New business, under action items, we have Strathmere Lodge roof rehabilitation, and we have a report from Brent Kerwin, who is the lodge administrator. What I miss?
Thank you,
Oh,
Warden.
just a second. I'm sorry, Brent. I turned the page and I skipped something again. Okay, so that's the minutes that I have to do. We have a motion before us that the minutes of April 9th, 2024 meeting of County Council be approved as presented, and that the recommendations made by the Committee of the Whole as set out in the minutes of the 9th, 2024 be adopted. Moved by Councillor McMillan and Councillor Mayhew. Thank you. All in favor? That is carried. Yes, sorry. Thank you, Brent, for your consideration. Sorry about that.
Thank you through you to council. To remind council members, council passed a resolution last October approving a repair to a section of the lodge's roof in the amount of $78,900 before taxes. This repair was necessary further to an infrared thermal scan done on the roof, showing a section of wet insulation existing. This has since been repaired. I pointed out, though, to council in October that the lodge roof constructed in 2006 is showing signs of deterioration in general. And I did suggest that consideration be given to addressing the lodge's roof in its entirety prior to any further roof failures. Council's budget committee did consider lodge roof options during this year's budget deliberations. And then via consultation with Garland Canada, which is a roofing industry leader, it was determined that the remaining roof insulation is in good shape, which would allow for a roof retrofit. A retrofit meaning maintaining the existing roof insulation, which again has been deemed to be in good shape. So it's a roof retrofit rather than a full roof replacement. A roof retrofit can be done with a 30-year leak-free warranty and at a substantial cost savings versus a full roof replacement. So with a roof retrofit in mind and keeping with the county's procurement policy, Garland Canada was engaged by the county through Kinetic. Kinetic is a group purchasing organization supporting public sector purchasing. Garland assisted the county with a roof retrofit project plan and a competitive tender process to include 6 pre-qualified roofing contractors. Attached to my written report is a summary of the concluded tender process and the 6 bids received. The bid amounts confirm that the roof retrofit can be done this year versus over multiple years and can be financed through the county's 2023 budget surplus and lodge reserves, consistent with the budget committee's initial staff direction regarding the lodge's roof. So my recommendation is that the Strathmere Lodge roof rehabilitation report be received for information, that the Strathmere Lodge administrator be directed to award the Strathmere Lodge roof retrofit project at the recommendation of Garland Canada to La Flèche Roofing Limited in the amount of $1,622,200 before taxes. The recommendation is that the Strathmere Lodge administrator be authorized to execute on behalf of county all agreements and other documents necessary to implement this award on confirmation that such agreements and other documents be in a form satisfactory to the county solicitor. happy to address the questions.
Thank you for your report. I'll look to council members. Are there questions? Councillor Rob?
Thank you through the warden, Brent. I appreciate the description of the retrofit, that they're taking the top layers off and it's just the insulation that's staying. My question is, for the 30-year warranty, who's the warranty with? Is it with the people putting it on, the contractors, or is it with the actual Garrett?
Through the council to council, it's through Garland Canada.
Okay.
Garland Canada is going to be the project manager, if you will, seeing.
Is there anyone else? Well, the report included a recommendation. I'll look for a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Robb, Councillor McGuire, thank you. All in favor? And that is carried. Alrighty, and moving on to our next action item, which is the asset retirement obligation. And I'll look to our Manager of Finance Community Services to present that. Go ahead, Cindy.
Thank you. And through the warden to council, in front of council today is a new finance policy for asset retirement obligations. This policy was created in response to a new accounting standard 3280. The county and lower tier municipalities in Canada are all required to follow this new accounting standard. These obligations could include remediation of contaminated assets, example, contaminated soils, or disposition of hazardous materials, again, for example, asbestos. Asset retirement obligations are the legal obligations that the county has with respect to the retirement of certain tangible capital assets. The relevant county assets include salt domes, gravel pits, a well, above ground and below ground fuel tanks. This policy sets the framework for how the county recognizes, measures, and discloses the legal obligations of our financial statements. The 2023 financial statements will reflect this policy. And when I come forward to council with those statements, I will point out this policy and the changes we had to make. The county policy is very similar to the policies you've already seen at your local councils. At this time, I'm recommending that the asset retirement obligations finance policy be approved. And as always, I'm very happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for that report. I will now look to council for questions, comments. I don't see any hands. In that case, the motion is before us. Thank you, Councillor Smyberg moving and Councillor Grantham seconding. All in favor? And that is carried. Are there any notices of motion? Okay, seeing none. Councillors' comments? Sorry. Oh, inquiries? Yes, go ahead, Councillor Burkhart-Jessen.
Yeah, thank you, Warden. I've got a question. I'm not exactly sure who it would be for. I think it's probably for Cindy. But today we received confirmation, or there was public confirmation, that the NSF or NHS funds from the feds were going to be distributed through the province through service managers. And I understand at this stage that it's early in the game, but I want to make sure that we have a plan and a strategy where we're engaging with the city to ensure that Middlesex has access to that sort of funding and make sure that our communities aren't left out in that.
Through the warden to councillor, it's a great question. I was asking the same thing when I read that this morning. Just so you know, we do have an upcoming meeting. I believe it's June 24th with the City of London, and that's the MOC meeting we have in regards to housing, social services, childcare, Ontario Works. So it's a great opportunity for us to put that on the agenda and have a conversation with them about how does that tie into the county. In the past, we haven't been able to utilize those dollars. So I think this looks very promising. And I'm really looking forward to having those conversations with the City of London and seeing if there's any money that can be flowed through to the county. And I'll report back when we hear more.
Go ahead. No add-on? Okay, thank you. And last or least, not least, councillors' comments and other business. Anyone have anything they want to bring up? Yes, go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Warden. There's nobody here from MLPS, but I did want to take this opportunity to congratulate everybody over at Paramedic Services. Last week was National Paramedic Appreciation Week, but it was also on Thursday, their annual Survivor Day. And it was another incredible ceremony that first responders were able to be celebrated. Not only first responders, but citizen bystanders, and of course, those that had suffered cardiac arrest and had been essentially a VSA for a period of time and had been revived back. So I want to congratulate the team over at MLPS for that ceremony. Councillor Clark was there as well, as was the warden. But I would like to just say to my colleagues, if you get a save the date and you can make it, it is, as I tell paramedics, my favorite day of the year. And if you've not had opportunity to participate and witness the ceremony, I really encourage you to do that. We will have 2 more in this term. And as I say, it brings everybody together, not just MLPS. There's members of our volunteer fire departments. There's members of the London City Fire Department that are honored. There's police officers, either from the OPP or from the city, that are often involved in these calls. And again, citizen bystanders. So just to put that in the back of your brain, when you get the save the date for next year, I would really encourage all of you to attend.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts. They're spot on. It is the most moving celebration. I would also echo your comments. It's worth attending. And now I'm going to vacate the chair and ask Deputy Warden Burkhart-Justin to come up.
Okay. So back in the saddle again. So in front of us, we've got a board of directors nomination, and I believe that you've all had opportunity to review it. If there's any question or comment on it at this time. Councillor Smybert.
Just a comment, I think. I want to thank Warden DeVitt for her participation in this association. I think it's a great value to us at the county level, but also the lower tier level as well. And I would be willing to move that motion. Thank you.
Okay, if I can get a seconder, and then I'll entertain more questions. Councillor Clark. Are there any other questions or comments on the nomination in front of us? With that, then moved by Councillor Smybert and seconded by Councillor Clark, the recommended motion in front of you. All in favor? And that's carried. And I would echo Councillor Smybert's comments. It is great, the work that you do, and to have that sort of representation at that level is beneficial to not only Middlesex and the local municipalities, but the region as a whole.
At least one. Yes. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Moving on now to the committee of the whole. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? That committee of the whole convene at 1:21 p.m. Councillor Smybert and Councillor Clark, thank you. All in favor? And that is carried. Delegations. Oh, okay. And reports from county officers. Then the first item up is 9B, Planning Reform Bill 185 and the proposed provincial planning statement. And Dirk Vanderwerf, the Director of Planning, and Abby Heddle, Planner, are going to be presenting this report. The floor is yours when you're ready.
Okay, thank you, Madam Warden. To council, I'll just give a brief introduction, and then Abby Heddle Jacobs is going to do most of the work. And then at the end, a couple points from me about implications for the county. But as you know, housing is a hot topic, and this is the province has undertaken another step on their housing action implementation plan. They put out Bill 185, the Cutting Red Tape and Building More Homes Act, for a 30-day consultation, and also another version of what would be the provincial planning statement to replace our current PPS. The changes build upon the work that they've been undertaking, and this time it's a bit unique. They're actually undoing quite a number of the changes that have been implemented over the last couple of years, and Abby will talk a bit more about that.
Thank you, Dirk. So Bill 185 proposes amendments to 15 statutes and associated regulations. As Dirk just mentioned, a number of the proposed changes either undo or clarify previous changes that were implemented through some of the previous housing bills. In terms of timing for the approval of this bill, it is not yet known, but it may be ahead of the summer recess at Queen's Park, which would happen likely in mid-June. So of most interest to us here in the county are the changes to the Development Charges Act, the Municipal Act, and the Planning Act. So I'm just going to touch on some of the key changes today. So the proposed amendments to the DC Act seem to be in response to some of the financial and administrative challenges that municipalities faced due to some of the previous amendments. These proposed changes include elimination of the 5-year phase-in of DCs, as well as the reinstatement of growth-related studies as eligible DC costs. Next slide, please. Oh, next slide, please. Thank you. Bill 185 also proposes to provide municipalities with use it or lose it authority under both the Municipal Act and the Planning Act. So this would allow municipalities to withdraw and reallocate water and wastewater capacity from an approved development where development is stalled for a specified period of time. Municipalities will be required to adopt these servicing management tools by bylaw as a means to formalize the process. And this is likely in response to municipalities having faced obstacles in the past with inactive developments. And this tool would just support the efficient allocation of housing enabling infrastructure. Next slide, please. So I have a couple slides on changes to the Planning Act, but first and foremost, planning responsibilities in the province remain unchanged for the most part, save and except for the regions of Halton, Peel, and York, who will no longer have planning authorities later this summer. Next slide, please. Pre-application consultation would also be voluntary, and applicants would be able to challenge the reasonableness of municipal complete application requirements to the OLT. I would just say that in our experience at the county, pre-consultation meetings generally yield great results and are beneficial to developers in securing planning approvals, especially for the larger and more complex proposals that we're seeing at increasing rates. And then to avoid unnecessary duplication, the Community Infrastructure Housing Accelerator is proposed to be eliminated through the bill. And a new framework for requesting minister's zoning orders would be established. And this would set out more clear criteria, including that a proposal deliver on a provincial priority. So this would generally be something like an investment attraction for a large employer or large housing developments. And this new framework would also consider whether a proposal is supported by a local council or not supported. Next slide, please. So third-party appeals for official plan and zoning bylaw amendments are proposed to be eliminated, except for specified persons, which include utility companies, the applicant, as well as our Indigenous communities. I would just note that this change would be retroactive, and it could have some implications for some of the ongoing matters before the OLT locally and at the county level. And on the appeal front, the bill also proposes to reinstate applicant rights of appeal for privately initiated proposals to expand settlement areas, unless the boundaries are approved by the province in a county official plan. Next slide, please. So on the draft provincial planning statement, so we currently use the provincial policy statement as well as the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe to provide provincial policy direction on land use planning. Obviously, the growth plan does not apply to us here in Middlesex. So we received an initial proposal around this time last year to combine the two documents into a new province-wide provincial planning statement. However, there was no decision rendered on the initial document, and the province subsequently released a further draft, which is what we have before us today. So generally speaking, this is a move to a more permissive planning framework with less stringent requirements from a growth management perspective. Next slide, please. The proposed PPS policies are grouped under 5 themes. So again, I'm just going to discuss some of the key changes that are proposed under each of these themes. So the first theme is generating an appropriate housing supply. So the proposed changes in this regard would require municipalities to provide a range and mix of housing options. And this would include a new and expanded definition of housing options. And this definition actually has regard for housing tenure as opposed to solely built form, which is what the previous definition kind of focused on. These changes would also require municipalities to permit more housing on farms, including specific development criteria for ARUs in our agricultural areas, as well as additional flexibility for housing for farm workers. And again, similar to the previous draft that we received, there is reference to the role of the housing service manager, and then the reintroduction of policies pertaining to affordable housing and related definitions, which were wholly excluded from the previous draft that we saw. So that's a step in the right direction. Next slide, please. So making land available for development is the next theme. And the proposed changes in this regard would require that municipalities plan for a minimum 20-year horizon with a maximum 30-year horizon, as opposed to the current maximum 25-year horizon that we plan for today. So essentially, this would just provide municipalities with a bit more flexibility in how long they're planning for. These changes would also require municipalities to base growth forecasts, so population and employment projections, on the Ministry of Finance 25-year projections. And they would provide greater flexibility for municipalities and developers to apply to expand settlement area boundaries without the requirement for a municipal comprehensive review and without as rigorous of criteria. Next slide, please. So the next theme is infrastructure to support development. And the proposed changes in this regard would relax the servicing hierarchy by providing for greater flexibility for development on partial or private services. And this would particularly apply to rural settlement areas. The proposed language also encourages municipalities to allocate and reallocate, if necessary, unused municipal water and sewage services to meet current and projected housing needs. So again, this notion of use it or lose it. And this change would align with the proposed amendments to the Municipal Act and the Planning Act. Next slide, please. So the fourth theme is balancing housing with resources. So the natural heritage policies in the proposed document and related definitions primarily reflect the existing policies within the PPS with very limited change. The document does introduce the concept of watershed planning, which suggests that municipalities may be taking an enhanced role in this area, but staff will likely be relying on some more direction from the CAs on this front. And the document also introduces the requirement for an agricultural systems approach to planning, which includes the identification of and planning for the agricultural land base and agri-food network. So this has a little bit of an economic development component to it. And the agricultural systems approach has been implemented in the Greater Golden Horseshoe for the last few years. So again, we would probably be relying on some more direction from the province in this regard. So the fifth theme is implementation. And the proposed document would require that planning authorities keep their zoning bylaws up to date with their official plans and the PPS, which is great. And it also clarifies that where a planning authority must decide on a planning matter before their official plan has been updated to be consistent with the new document, council must make a decision that is consistent with the PPS. Thank you.
Through the warden, just we would just like to then highlight, if I can, sort of 5 key implications for the county. And I do have to say also, we did work with the warden to submit a letter on behalf of the county. There was only 30 days for comment period, and it didn't coincide, of course, with our council meeting schedule. So it certainly is aligned with the letters that you've provided previously and reflects this presentation, among other things. So the first area we just highlight is additional residential units, ARUs, and this is something, we're now on our 3rd version of what an ARU would be from the province. This new, the new language doesn't affect the as of right permissions in fully serviced areas, but does affect partial services and ag areas, and really speaks about sort of not far off from what is in the county's official plan now, but clustering and keeping those uses close together. In terms of lot creation, you'll recall, of course, the 2023 PPS proposal would have allowed for fairly significant lot creation in the agricultural area. That is not in this version. That's been removed. So the severance policies are essentially the same, with a little bit of a tweak for this resident surplus to a farming operation. And they're adding the language about once per farm consolidation. So at best, based on our consultation with the province, what their intention there is, where you've got a farm with, say, 2 houses. There have been municipalities that have allowed, if both of those houses were surplus to the farming operation, both of those houses to be severed. Under this proposed policy, it would only be one of those homes for that consolidation. And then Abby talked about this a little bit already, which is sort of implications, boundary adjustment. So it would be, in the past, we've gone from a 20-year planning horizon to a 25. Now it would be a minimum of 20 and a maximum of 30. The policies would move away from an MCR, a municipal comprehensive review, and would allow both municipalities, but also developers to put forward individual expansions to settlement areas. And of course, we've talked before about sort of the implications of councils and municipalities dealing with those individual proposals. There might be implications related to your infrastructure. You've done work on a 25-year servicing master plan to coincide with your official plan boundaries. And then there are changes underway either by the municipality or through other avenues that change the boundaries and how you reconcile and ensure those things are together. And then just the appeal rights. The fact at present, and it's been in place for quite a few years, developers, they can apply for a boundary expansions, but they're not allowed to appeal if councils decide not to adopt that. That we may end up with increased legal costs for that component if that continues. And then the language speaks, and this was in the last version of it, slightly differently, about upper tier or county growth responsibilities. So the language is moving towards upper tiers in consultation with municipalities and others, allocating growth across the county. You know that the way our official plan is structured right now, we have broad population projections, and then individual municipalities through your OPs can then define those. Ultimately, county council is the approval authority. So there is that check and balance in the system, if you will. But there seems to be a move towards putting those lines, those settlement lines, in a county official plan rather than a local official plan. And what that really does is that puts it then, the approval authority would be the province, which I believe is what they're trying to do. So again, there's not a lot of detail in there yet to know exactly how that would need to be implemented. So just wanted to put that on your radar. And then just the final comment I would make is there's a number of areas now where it says subject to provincial guidance. New policies introduced and it says subject to provincial guidance. One thing that we've, and if you ever have an opportunity to speak to the province on any of these items, is the timely provision of that guidance would be really helpful. They sometimes they mention that and then nothing sort of follows up. And I would give you the example of, we've talked to staff about this a number of times, population, housing, and employment forecasts. You know, municipalities do them, the county does them, private sector people do them, the school board does it. It'd be great if there's a set system, if there's a way to do it that everyone can, that the province sets and sets the rules, then we could all implement it, and then we wouldn't have to have OLT hearings about how the math works out. So that would just give that as one example. If they're going to give guidance, it'd be helpful if that was sort of quite timely and specific to those areas that really would benefit. So that's sort of the end of our presentation, Madam Warden, but we would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for that succinct recap. I'm going to look to council then. Questions, comments on the report? I'll start with Councillor Grantham.
Thanks, Warden, through to staff. I was looking for the comment regarding the role of the housing service manager. I wonder if you could expand on that a little bit, just what that entails.
Yeah, thank you through the warden. You know, as we know, the City of London is the housing service manager, and it talks in the PPS about the role of the housing service manager in planning, et cetera. And so the warden's letter just points out, it doesn't really specify what that means. So the warden's letter does point out that in the case of Middlesex and London, they're distinct municipalities. Housing and planning is very different in London than it is in our communities. And so that needs to likely be acknowledged in the provincial policy statement. If we're going to have that language, it should, I can imagine that perhaps they're thinking in cases where it's, you know, the City of London, is maybe just that department isn't involved in planning. In this case, it's actually a separate entity. And so that was the caution on that.
Councillor Burkhart-Jessen.
Great, and thank you for the warden, through the warden. Abby and Dirk, thank you very much for this. This was a great overview as to what's in front of us. I just had a couple of questions, and I understand this is all part of you know, your interpretation of what is going to be in front of us, and we're assuming this one's going to be passed. But on, I don't know what slide number it is. The sentence, restoration of applicant appeal rights for privately initiated proposals to expand settlement area boundaries, I get, unless the boundaries are approved by the province. So I'm a little confused. If the province, or if the boundaries have been approved by the province, I guess, because you're saying that they're now going to be the approval, not the county on behalf of the province. So if they are approved, then a developer can't appeal, or an interested party can't appeal.
Through the warden, a number of years, one of the previous provincial changes is that they took away the right to appeal anything the province does, essentially. So the county's official plan, when it's approved, there's no appeal right for anyone. The legislation, therefore, if boundaries are set, say, one example would be the County of Oxford, where their official plan is actually the upper and the local official plan. The boundaries for Woodstock are set in the County of Oxford official plan. It's approved by the province, and there is no appeal of that. In the case of the way that we function, where the county council is approving, say, the Adelaide Metcalfe official plan and the boundaries for Kerwood, that would be subject to appeal. So it's just where the province is the approval authority. And then there's a slight nuance where some two-tier structures, the boundary, say, of Kerwood will be set in the county's official plan. This is not how we do it now, but it could be. The boundary is set in the county's official plan, and then the Adelaide Metcalfe official plan would speak about the designations and what that would look like in more detail. So in that case, the boundary cannot be appealed if it's if the province has approved it.
Okay, thank you. I just have two more. Then I wondered with the use it or lose it, is there any reference to a time frame as to how long somebody can sit on it? And then the other one is just again with the housing on the farms and permitting more. Again, what does that speak to? Is it just single ARUs, or are they looking more for actual farming housing, you know, for employees, that sort of thing? Or does it even go into that sort of detail?
Thank you, through the warden. I'm going to take this one. So the use it or lose it authority, municipalities can decide on the time frame through the policy that would be adopted by bylaw. generally, I think it would be tied to like a lapsing provision on a draft plan approval. Just what I think. And then in regards to housing on farms, so they are allowing for additional flexibility for housing for farm workers. And the PPS would allow for it on a permanent basis. And I would just note that through County OPA 3, the county official plan in Middlesex also now allows for housing for farm workers on a permanent basis as well. And then the proposed PPS would just provide more specific development criteria for the ARUs on farms, which in reality could also be used for employment. Thank you.
Is there anyone else? Oh, I had a question. With respect to the severances on consolidation of farm properties. Originally, you were saying that you were allowed to sever both homes from, I guess, depending on the sequence in which things happened, you could have farms that were belonging to one farmer, but both houses had been sold off. But that has changed now to only one home severance per consolidation. Did I explain that properly?
Yes, ma'am.
Right.
That is correct. That's what we understand
Now,
they mean to be.
and as I recall back when the conversation started in the early 2010s, when we were looking at it in our municipality, we were afraid that housing stock would be lost. We had farmers who had a dozen or more farms who'd had no use for the homes, and rather than rent them and so forth, and have difficulties with rental properties, there was the danger of bulldozing those homes. Isn't this policy going to maybe create that environment again where we be losing housing stock in rural Ontario? And I mean, our arguments were that schools need children, roads, the buses run down those roads, and all the other things that come from having, well, for example, we had young families who wanted to return to rural Ontario but couldn't afford to buy a farm, but were happy to live in a surplus farm residence because they were really not interested in farming either. This seems to be counterproductive to attracting people to existing housing stock. It's just a comment. I don't know. I'm just thinking that the interpretation I take away from what you just said is that we might be losing perfectly good homes in rural Ontario. Or am I wrong in that?
Through the one, I would say we don't face a lot of cases where there are 2 or 3 homes on a farm that fall in the circumstance. There certainly are out there, of course, especially places that had dairy historically, right? And I'd have to do a bit of a tally. So I would think we only have 2 or 3 a year at the most. We have average about 50 surplus dwelling consents across the county annually. So it's a small component of it. It also doesn't, when I asked them the question, they don't yet have an answer, is my question was, what about time? You know, maybe the dwelling is surplus to this farm operation today, but in 8 years, if it's sold to somebody else, a different farming operation, could they apply then? And they don't know, they didn't have an answer for that yet.
Because I was thinking along the lines, if you have 2 plots and then they're merged because it's meant to be one property, I know some properties are listed differently for whatever reasons. The names are kept separate and that so forth. But if they're merged, you could have 2 houses on buying a new farm. And then down the road, we've had one actually that was reverted. 200 acres was split back into 100. Wow, they came back for severance. And at that point, there was only 1 house left on the property. But anyway, okay, that's just a small proportion of everything moot. Okay, thank you very much for explaining that. Is anyone else wanting to ask one more question or no? Okay, so we do have a motion before us that the planning reform, Bill 185, and the proposed planning statement presentation be received for information. I have Councillor Mayhew, Councillor Smybert, all in favor, and that is carried. Thank you kindly. Moving on to the report from the CAO on the mid-year progress report. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Warden. As the Warden mentioned, I've been around a little while, and when you're sitting in this chair at one of the fastest growing municipalities in all of Canada, you have a couple of choices you can either retire and go sit on a beach, or you can sprint to the finish line, whatever that finish line may be. And with the best team in municipal government, I decided we'd sprint to the finish line. And today is a representation of that. Thankfully, council's given us the resources and that team I talked about, where internally we've been able to put together what I would describe this year as probably the most aggressive administrative schedule we've ever tackled. It's I always describe this to our team and council members as our jobs are really made up of at the senior level are made up of a management component, a practical component that is your everyday job that you do, and then there's this special project piece that's there as well that thankfully our team has decided that they're willing to come along for this ride and really try to implement a number of amazing projects this year. Conservatively, I would say we have double or almost triple what we normally would try to tackle in a year. And that is just frankly because of the pace of change. It is also a little bit of the timing cycle of the electoral cycle, in that, sort of that first year is everybody sort of figuring out what we want to do. That second year is really about implementation. And that's where I come in and the rest of the team come in as implementation, and then improving upon those for the next 2 years of your election cycle. So we collectively selected 10 projects. John gave me a 10B that I should have had in here. So 11 projects I'm going to talk about today, but I probably could talk about 30 that are ongoing actively, that the team's helping with and that we're all leading together. So let's take a look at some of these, and that's kind of the overview of what we're trying to do. And this is a little bit of a heat signature. We've got it in blue, but you can imagine it being in a scale of red as well. It kind of matches the slide better in blue. One of the things that's really been an important component for this year that I talked a lot to the budget committee, talked a lot to council about, is this economic development corporation strategy. Whether we do this or not, ultimately isn't my main concern. It's having this debate and having this discussion is really what I want to get going. And it's not an easy discussion to have, because we have done economic development pretty consistently the same way for a good period of time. And so this project has occupied a lot of opportunity costs and resources to try and get moving. And I don't just mean at the county. We've enjoyed the opportunity to work with some of our lower tier friends on moving this project forward, and we're getting it close. We've got that marker in that middle-ish area, but this is something that you're definitely going to hear a lot more of in September of this year. That kickoff meeting's been completed. Kara and Paul and everybody have been helping to lead this. With all of these projects, we have a team of support, but we try to have 1 or 2 leaders from our senior team, and Kara is definitely in the leadership position for the work that we're doing here along with Paul. And that RFP's been awarded, as it mentions there as well. So this work plan is really coming along. I'm pleased with all the pre-work. It's not just the start of this project at the RFP. There was a lot of pre-work that had to be done to get everybody interested, understand what the options are. And then council's going to kick into the decision-making mode in that September piece. So as with everything I'm going to mention here, I'll be glad to answer any questions you have about where this, how any level of detail you want to drill down to. The next one I just wanted to talk about is the development charges background study. Paul's going to talk more about that today, right, Paul? So I won't go into this one in too much detail, but you should know that we have things scheduled. It's on track. It's exactly on the track that we predicted it would be. And we're really pleased with how this project's moving along. We're also, as with all of these things, there's an administrative component, there's a political component, and there's an implementation component. The warden and I have been certainly pulled up our socks on this whenever it comes to the political component. We've been talking a lot about development charges when we've been out and about in local municipalities and the need for it. And I noticed as well, or I was told today, that at the federal level, there's conversation about development charges. So this is going to be a big topic of conversation going forward about what we do and why we do it. And during the budget process, I explained why I think this is important for a municipality that's growing as fast as we are. So that's coming up as well. Next is the asset management plan. This is a very big project. I know many of you have been through a project of similar size, and it may be even larger in size. And so that RFP has been awarded, and we're right on target with this project as well. Those assessments are 50% complete. You'll know from your own local municipalities about the work that has to be done on facility audits, and those reports are to be ready by June of 2024. So again, this is a September thing. Make sure you schedule your holidays in August and after the end of the year, because September to December, I think, is going to be a pretty busy time period for council with a lot of big things landing on your desk, including this asset management plan. We talked a lot about, well, it's okay. You can move forward to ITS. I just want to say this slide's about cybersecurity, but one of the things the warden and I noticed at every one of our meetings, I think, was that Chris Bailey was right behind us or right before us, talking about service agreements. And one of the big things that I think first came up through local CAOs meetings was about cybersecurity. It also came through council, and Chris and his team have done a great job of expanding the cyber training programs and getting that technology in place. This was a big project for the ITS department, and we're really pleased that we're nearing the finish line on this and our service level agreements. So kudos to that team for getting that work done, I think a little ahead of schedule by my calendar. Next, we have the dashboards. Now, this is something I get teased about a lot. We tease each other here every once in a while about a few things. I think it's a bit of a drinking game at this point between Bailey and Paul about how many times I'll say dashboards in a week. But let me just tell you why I'm so excited about dashboards. That's 2 drinks, by the way, for you guys. That'll be later. But I really want there to be an opportunity for council to just have this constant ability 24/7 to check on a few things and just have that red light, orange light, green light, and be able to sort of have that dashboard that you can look at and be able to say, okay, I'm going to ask a question about this because I see something changing on these dashboards that I just don't understand, and it's that information that's almost passively always there for you, but it's not only passively always there for you, it's also passively always there for the public. And what we're trying to do is get a more transparent system that shows where you don't have to go look for information or ask for information. It should be there readily available. And we're getting there quicker than I anticipated, actually, I think, on this project with that open book. Is that a link that works? You want to push it? Oh, okay. Because this is relatively new that's okay. Everybody gets a look at my new haircut. So the open book project around the budget is relatively new for it to be launched. What are we at, Paul? Just a couple days? Yesterday. Oh, okay. And while Greg's finding that, I'll keep going, Greg, and I'll just talk more about some of the other ones. The other one that is really important. Oh, is that it? No. Okay, you just yell whenever you get it. The phase 2 of the budget. Sorry? Oh, okay. So what am I looking at here? Oh, okay. I really should put on my glasses. So these are the opportunities to go to each individual one. I thought you were linking to the open book one, which looks completely different than that. But anyways, these are the links to go to each individual one. And the goal is to have a common clearinghouse for these dashboards, but also in each one of these different project areas, the budget variance report, operating expenses, our statistical performance data, you're going to be able to see things and have them readily available that just haven't been readily available to you or the public before. And I think the heart of this is really to just engage debate and discussion. Often I'll raise red flags for you or yellow flags for you, but I want to be able to make sure that you have the opportunity to passively see this information and ask things. And this is a project that, in my view, is just going to continue to expand and expand. It's not easy to do this work, but it is something that ultimately will all be tied together, where you're going to see more information about MLPS data. You're going to see more information about financial data. It's all going to be there for you. Kathy?
Thanks. And through the warden, Bill. So this is on the website, or it will be on the website? Oh, it is on the website. Okay, so this open book, is that like new software? Or is it
Go ahead.
something that we take from Questica? Like, what is this?
Through Madam Warden, it is not new software. It's existing software done through the previous modernization program through Questica. And what we've done effectively is taken the 10 years of budgets that are on the website and put it into a user-friendly format. And as we go forward and continue to enhance our abilities, we'll be able to have live views of data. But this is 10 years of data and a different representation of the great work finance did on the 2024 budget for people to go in and do assessments between service areas and to download that raw data, sort of an open data initiative.
Okay, just follow. That's fantastic. As somebody that's been on the budget committee for the last number of years, this is huge. And to be able to have this information now, and yeah, so congratulations. Very excited about this. This is great.
Thank you, Madam Warden. I think we want to add one more thing, is that ITS has been integral on this. And also we're actually kind of taking a concept that Middlesex Center and Thames Center did, and they have great data on their website as well. And they assisted us with some of our formatting, and we just took it a bit further and put 10 years on it. So we're looking forward to working collaboratively going forward on these initiatives.
One of the things that's really important, I think, if you're a member of the public, is to see those trend lines of where things were and then where they're going. Why that's important is because what I've been talking to the team about a lot is that your house is the most important investment that you're going to make for most folks. And whenever you're making that investment, it's not just the price of the house or what might happen with the house. It's also what's happening under the ground with infrastructure and what's happening with costs of debt. All those types of things are part of the financial decision-making model that should be readily available to the taxpayer. And these dashboards are going to go a long ways towards it. So, but I don't want you to just think that they're financial. They really are going to also be about statistical performance in a whole bunch of other areas whenever it's all done. So this is a work in progress, but the team wanted to show you sort of that first phase of where we're at. So more to come there. Okay. I'm moving on to strategic plan update. And the warden did talk about this Middlesex Municipal Day roughly a month ago. And there's a report coming to you on June 25th. In the background, what we've been doing is looking at, one of the things I always have to do is I have to look at our available resources and compare it to these projects and figure out how we're going to get some of these things done, or whether we're going to contract them out. In all of these cases, I think, I'm just going by memory here, we're doing this internally. And one of the things that we've been doing in the background for the last little while is strategically planning how we're going to do the strategic plan. And we really do want to spend we have spent a lot of time thinking about whether we have the internal resources. And then we started thinking about, okay, what would it look like and how would it be different? How would the feedback from last time's process and the time before that, or other plans we've done, not the time before that. I mean, other plans we've done like economic development, library, some other ones. How would all that feedback educate us about what we would do differently going forward? So all of that is going to be put into a report that is going to come to you in June. And what else do we have there? Oh, the statistical data that's needed is getting refined. And and we're going to have more KPIs, and every KPI we can possibly get, I think, is going to be in the new strategic plan where we're going to be able, where we can measure, we're going to try to measure, which is something that you don't hear very often in government. Okay. Now this is one that's near and dear to my heart because it is two areas of focus where we've been doing a lot of work lately is on service area reviews at Strathmere Lodge and MLPS. And this one, why is this important? Well, in both of these healthcare services, it's where you as a council have the greatest risk. And it's also in one of those areas where you're seeing the greatest growth. And so the scaling that has to happen to provide the very best service at the very best price, and also to eliminate risk in both of these areas is really important. And it means you don't stand still. It means you go and you look at everything from top to bottom in these areas. And the other reason it's important is because it's been a real great opportunity. I get the chance to lead both of these projects. I get the chance to lead all of them if I want to, but in these two, it's been fun because we've brought together a multidisciplinary team to look at all of this. And it's been an amazing, fun process for us because what I bring to the table versus what Chris brings to the table, or Cindy, or whoever else are on these projects, it's been a fun collaborative process. So you see a couple of examples of things that are rolling out here, but I'll give you an example in MLPS. I don't know what my number is now, Paul, but I can probably name 9 different operational plans that we want to implement over the next 8 to 12 months. That's a lot. That tells you that there's a lot of scaling that's happening there. There's a lot of things that we think we can improve upon. And same at Strathmere Lodge. We're looking at that structure that really hasn't had the most aggressive look in a while and seeing whether it still works for 2024 and beyond. So you're going to hear a lot more about that, but this does occupy a lot of our resources to look at these two areas, as you might imagine. Okay. CMSM is a term that you've heard probably a few times around this table, the Consolidated Municipal Service Manager Agreements. Now, this is on here because it's coming up. And we need to start thinking about it. Why do we need to start thinking about it? Because it is consequential. This is these agreements for social housing, Ontario Works, childcare, land ambulance, and what am I forgetting? I said Ontario Works. I think I got them all. Housing. There's the one I forgot. Okay. This is like a participation game. This is good. So we got them all collectively. And so when you think about that, those are all big ticket items. Social housing is a massive part of your budget, and same with land ambulance. And also their risk areas where you have to make sure you understand how these services are delivered. So this is a partnership discussion that we have with the City of London about these CMSM agreements. Then it's set out by agreement what the terms are for this, and also a negotiation period for when this is happening. So you can see that's coming up. And I can tell you internally, we've had a couple of conversations about we need to start getting ready as a group about this so that we're well educated about what the options are and looking forward to the challenges. I think Kathy has a question.
Thanks, through the warden. So just on that, I'm glad that there's the background conversations going on amongst staff. But January 1st isn't that far from now. And it's my belief that I think that there should be a committee of some sort struck with council members and staff to develop what is our strategy going into those negotiations, so that council can have input, but also be continually updated, because it's not a long negotiation period. And I think that we've got a partner in our CSMs that are going to come to the table with some, I think they're going to come with some aggressive asks, and we need to be prepared for that. So personally, I'd like to see something done sooner rather than later to strike something up.
Yep, I agree, Warden. I think that that's a great idea, and we'll leave it up to you, Warden, for how we progress through that. But the sooner the better as far as we're concerned as well. I think there's a couple of phases here. I'll just describe them in my words. The first phase is information gathering, statistical analysis, and why is that important? I'll just explain to council for a second that these CMSM agreements that we have are unique in the province. They were something that was one of the first projects I worked on when I came here. And at the time, the province set out a set of rules for how CMSMs were going to be created and made. And Linda Reed and I, who was a city manager at the City of London at the time, said, we don't think that's going to work for, what did I say? You got that look on your face. Like, anyways, like Linda Reed and I were talking about this, and we both said, well, that doesn't necessarily look like Middlesex London. What can we do collectively together that's better for Middlesex London? And just over time, we've iterated and iterated and iterated to the point where we have just a fantastic arrangement on CMSM agreements that is very unique and very good for both parties. And so to the past warden's comments, it's really important that we maintain that degree of knowledge of why these are important. There's a lot of history beside and organizational memory we need to include in this, and a lot of statistics. And I think we're ready on those two things. If I'm in the right spot on where we are with all of our organizational memory, and then if we can get that political body in place, Warden, we can start talking and educating more about what we see going forward. So that's sort of the next phase for sure. And we don't need a lot of folks, I don't think, Kathy, but having a group there that represents and can report back to council would be just fantastic for us. So we'll leave that in your hands, Warden. Next is the 2025 budget, and the 2025 budget, the 2024 budget was already a major departure, in my view, from past cycles. And I think everybody on the budget cycle, oh, they're all nodding their head, all the budget committee members. So that's good. They all agree with this statement. We didn't practice that, but it was quite a departure, I think, in a positive way from previous years, and really did produce some tangible results that the committee is quite proud of. But also administratively, we're quite proud of some of the progress. A lot of work went into making sure that we get those delivery dates where they are. And I really do thank I didn't do it, the team did it. And I think now Brian asked a great question not that long ago about the cadence of this. Are we going to be able to keep the cadence of it up? Yes, I think we can keep the cadence of that early cycle in place, but I wouldn't want to. We had originally planned to go even earlier. I think it's time to sort of just take a little bit of a breath, keep that cadence, practice, and then see whether we want to go earlier again. So that's what our plan is, but we're going to continue to enhance that. And I won't even say what it says in that last bullet. There's new things coming and updated variance reports that's going to help with that accountability. But as well, I think everything you saw in a couple of slides ago about information provision for the public, we're going to try to get the information out to the public earlier through these new techniques as well. So a lot of paddling under the surface that you may not be seeing on the 2025 budget, but we're feeling very confident that we're going to meet those targets, if not exceed them. And so that's exciting. You're going to see that whole plan coming up. Next on the list is modernization and digitization initiatives. This is a catch-all category for a lot of things that are going on that may not be terribly evident, but are resource consumers. And I would say I would have put this slide a little bit over more to the right. I think we're being a little modest here, but there is a lot of work that has been done in making this fully searchable, and everything that is in the entire department. I think you don't see a whole lot of paper anymore for legislative services, and I think that's a credit to all the work that's been done in that department, and planning and development, getting ready for their work. Is something that is a major focus of our projects this year. And why is that important? We'll go on to the next slide. And no, we'll go back to that slide then. Why is reducing storage requirements important and digitizing? Because we're planning a transition to a new building, which leads me to the 10B that John asked about. before the meeting. And what we've been trying to do for a while is understand not only what our paper footprint is or our storage requirement footprint is, but what's our organizational footprint going to be now and in the future, and then right size our new building towards that so we're as efficient as possible. And so there's a couple other things that are happening related to the building. Of course, there's a payment schedule, and John asked me to just comment on this, so I will, if I find it. Here's my notes on this. So the question is about payments for the sale of the building, and then I'll move into the new building. So you'll recall that in 2020, there was a payment of 13 million and change, and the county still owed roughly 17 million that was in the form of a vendor take back mortgage. That becomes due on December of 2024. So that's not that far away, as Kathy pointed out. Januaries and Decembers are coming up fast, Warden. And so that's the way that will work. Council has approved in the past a use of proceeds. It resulted in Alan giving me a very nice shirt that said on the front of it, yeah, and he got it in beautiful gold lettering and handed it to me. And history will remember that. And I think our use of proceeds from the sale of the building is in a perfect spot. And certainly Council of the Day felt that it was. But we will get the rest of that money. So often we talk about $30 million. I don't actually have it, or Cindy doesn't have it in her wallet yet or in the county wallet yet. But it will be in December of 2024, which leads me to the whole county building discussion, which some members around the table have been involved in the building committee and helping us work with that. But that really should be a thing up here, because organizational resources, this is a very special project. It's kind of a once in every couple of generations project, and Chris is leading the charge for us on that. And the next update I think you're going to get is going to be probably pretty soon, I guess, Chris, because you're going to talk about permits and applications. That's sort of the next update. We've already talked about costing and moving forward with architecture. So that project is going to, and it be a big component of what we do over the last half of this year and into next year. But then the other sort of 10C to that is there's a lot of work going on right now in what that transition to a new building looks like. So that's everything from how do you do business continuance to furniture to what happens to chattels. All kinds of things are going into that just aren't part of our normal business cycle, that only come up once every 230 years or so. So that is a big project as well. And John, I hope that answered your question on that. Okay, Warden, the other reason we wanted to put this up as a team was not only to display and give you an update of where things are, to sort of tell you that we think we have the right number of resources and the right people to lead these things without needing any additional resources or people. So that's good news as well. But also it's because we want to know if there's other things that you want added into this list. I know there's other things that I haven't mentioned, but if there are, please do. And it doesn't have to be now, but there are some big things that administratively maybe are in the back of your mind. And please put them forward to us. But we want to be able to rank those and prioritize them and get them into the schedule over the course of time. So give that some thought as well, Warden, and that's where we're at.
Okay, thank you for that update. I know we've taken questions as we've gone along. Is there anything that someone wants to comment on or final thoughts? Seeing no hands, then there is a motion before us that the CAO mid-year update report be received for information. Councillor Clark and Councillor Grantham, thank you. All in favor? And that is carried. All right, moving on to number 9C2, which is development charges background study. And I'll look to Paul Shipway, our General Manager of Strategic Initiatives. Skipped one again. Oh, yeah. I keep moving us along more quickly than I ought to. Okay, I'm sorry, I missed one report, which is coming from Brent Kerwin, Strathmere Law Administrator, and it's about Ministry of Long-Term Care compliance. It's not about Yeah, that's twice, isn't it? For you.
It's different.
To wait, I'm sorry. Okay.
Through you, Warden, to remind council, long-term care homes are required to submit what are called critical incident reports to the Ministry of Long-Term Care based on a list of critical incidents as defined in our provincial long-term care home legislation. The ministry in turn is required to review and investigate all critical reports submitted by long-term care homes. Among critical incident reports to be reported to the ministry are any allegations of abuse, including any resident-to-resident abuse. It also includes any resident injury requiring hospital transfer. The lodge submitted a critical incident report to the ministry regarding 2 lodge residents, which triggered a ministry inspector visit to the lodge for part of 1 day in order to review what was reported. The inspector reviewed all relevant documentation and conducted interviews with applicable lodge staff, then issued a written report indicating no lodge contravention of provincial legislation with respect to the critical incident that was reported by the lodge. This is the desired outcome when it comes to ministry inspector visits and reports. So I'm just recommending that the Ministry of Long-Term Care Compliance Inspection Report be received for information.
Thank you for that report. Does anyone have questions on it? I don't see any hands, so there is the motion before us that we receive this report for information. If I could have a move, please, Deputy Warden, Burkhart Jessen and Councillor Mayhew, all in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. And now we can move on to the development charges update study from our General Manager of Strategic Initiatives.
To you, Madam Warden, thank you. This is an informational report on the development charges background study. Budget Committee provided direction to prepare a development charges background study for ultimate council consideration. This report is to provide a bit of background and context to that. So Budget Committee requested that staff compile this so that Middlesex County could consider all available revenue tools that are legislatively available. This report provides some local context, which municipalities within the area are utilizing development charges, and also some provincial context from the FIR to demonstrate which upper tier counties are utilizing development charges. Going over this, the development charges background study that Watson assisted the interdisciplinary staff team, transportation with Chris, planning and development with Dirk, and finance with Cindy all contributed greatly. And I think we should note Ryan Hillinger put a ton of work into gathering the roads and roads related data. And ultimately a proposed DC is within this report. And the next steps for this would be the development charges public meeting scheduled for June 26th. Notice has been provided, and then ultimately July 16th, 2024, County Council could consider implementation of development charges bylaw, considering potential feedback that the county may or may not receive at the public meeting. And in the end, it just reiterates that the purpose of this is to consider all available revenue generation tools. And we did run a little bit of what DCs would look like for the county, and utilizing historic growth trends and the projected DC, it would be about 3.4 million or 6.2% on the current tax levy. And that aligns with sort of what has been utilized from reserves in the past, and continuing to take from reserves obviously is not a sustainable approach. So this provides that option. We've also done a landscape analysis looking at Bruce and Oxford really about collection of DCs, and we'll continue to discuss that further at the upcoming CAO's meeting to ensure that if this goes ahead, that ultimately it's a smooth process for all involved. And yes, happy to happy to answer any questions that you may have. So thank you.
Thank you for that report. I'll look to council for comments and questions. I don't see any hands. So there is a motion before us that the development charges background study report be received for information. If I could have a mover and a seconder, Councillor Smybert and Councillor Robb, thank you. All in favor? And that is carried. And moving to 9.3, this is the County Road and Bridge Assumption Study, and Chris Trainey is going to present that report.
Thank you, Madam Warden. Time flies. Seems like we just did this yesterday, but it's time to convene our ad hoc committee for the County Road and Bridge Assumption Review. The list of recommended members is in the report. The warden and myself, and then we try to get a bit of a distribution between our sort of urban municipalities and rural. So recommendation this year is for Brian Robb from the municipality of North Middlesex, Michelle Smybert from Thames Center, Andrew Geeson, the transportation manager from Middlesex Center, Mauro Castrilli, who's the manager of public works, so it's Middlesex, and then Ryan Hillinger, who's the engineering supervisor for Middlesex County. The normal practice of this committee is to meet 3 or 4 times between now and early 2025. Our typical practice for assumption of new infrastructure during this process is July of every 5 years, just to be out of our winter maintenance season. So the recommendation is the committee be struck as recommended, and be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Council, are there questions, comments? Nothing on that item. Then the motion before us is that the appointments to the County Road and Bridge Assumption Study Committee be approved as follows, and that was as listed in the report. If there's a mover, please, Deputy Mayor, pardon me, Councillor Brennan and Councillor Grantham. All in favor? And that is carried. Okay, 9C4, proposed plan of subdivision for Newberry, and Dirk, the floor is yours when you're ready.
Thank you through the warden. This is the first time in my time with the county that I've had the opportunity to bring a plan of subdivision in Newberry forward. So this is a 17 lot proposal, single detached units, a cul-de-sac that would be developed on full municipal services. You've seen a very similar report to this before. Of course, it gives a high level overview from the county's perspective. I would note that the proposal was supported by Newberry Village Council earlier this month. We did undertake an agency ministry circulation. There are preliminary conditions recommended with the report to address comments from the Conservation Authority, CN Railway, and of course Newberry itself. The policies do direct growth to settlement areas, ideally on full services. And as I've indicated in the final paragraph, I do believe it to be consistent with the provincial policy statement in conformity with the official plans, and I am recommending approval. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dirk. Anything on the Newberry proposal? Seeing no hands, the motion before us is that the proposed plan of subdivision be granted draft plan approval subject to conditions, and that a notice of decision be circulated as required by the Planning Act, and that notice of decision that all written submissions received on the application were considered, the effect of which helped make an informed recommendation decision. Is there a mover, please, and a seconder? Councillor Clark and Councillor Smybert, thank you. All in favor? And that is carried. All righty, and next up we have the file on Middlesex Center Ballymote Developments. Again, yours, Dirk, if you'd like to take it away.
Thank you through the warden. This is again a residential plan of subdivision for single detached units. It's in Ballymote on County Road 23 and also on County Road 28. It would create 19 lots for single attached dwellings, and it would be partial servicing, so municipal water, individual, private, sanitary. It is part of a larger property. The rest of the farmland is located outside of the existing hamlet boundary, and so that's not subject to the proposal. The application also would require an amendment to the official plan. And it's really the current policies would not allow a development of this size on partial services. So the official plan amendment would recognize in this circumstance that it may proceed. Again, my report gives a high level overview. The application was initially accepted actually in April of 2021, ultimately supported by Middlesex Center Council in April of 2024. And really as the report gives an overview, there are some particular comments to address the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority. There's some detailed engineering that has to happen in relation to a couple of lots that are near a drain. Also to satisfy the Kansas County Transportation Department, shared driveways, entrance permits, access, etc., and then the municipality. The fundamental issue, though, that did lead to the multi-year processing timeline was just to address the technical ability to develop 19 lots on partial services. So the applicant submitted certain information, the municipality had it peer reviewed, it went back and forth a couple of times. In the end, the municipality and their engineers are satisfied that partial servicing at this location can be supported for the long term. The Policy, and you've heard me say this before, the provincial policy statement, the ideal location is on settlements on full, is in settlement areas on full municipal services. There is policy allowance, however, where conditions are suitable for the long term for partial or private servicing. And this would represent effectively the build out of this hamlet area. So in the end, I am recommending approval. I do believe that both the plan of subdivision, subject to the conditions, and also the official plan amendment are consistent with the provincial policy statement and would conform with the official plans.
Thank you, Dirk. Does anyone want to comment on this file? I don't see any hands. That's a lengthy motion before us. So if I could have a mover and a seconder for the motion as presented, that'd be Councillor Burkhart-Justin and Councillor McMillan. Thank you. All in favor? And that is carried. And now this one's in Thames Centre. Go ahead, Dirk, when you're ready.
Thank you. Through the warden. When I reread this last night, I think I could have explained it a little bit better in terms of what's actually happening on the property. It is two applications. So there's an underlying plan of subdivision that would establish just a few lots, 6 lots, I believe, and a stormwater management block. And then there's the plan of subdivision would also create a larger block that is then proposed by the plan of condominium to be further subdivided as a VLC or vacant land condominium for 25 units. So a portion of it is public infrastructure, public road, and then the other portion of it is by plan of condominium. The supporting information is attached to the report. This one also had, for the plan of subdivision, had an extended processing time. The actual application was made in 2021. At that time, Thames Centre Council, it was actually a different plan completely. Thames Centre Council did not support the proposal. The applicant revisited and then came back with a new plan and the plan of condominium. So there is that additional delay, if you will, there to come to a plan that was supportable by local council. The other thing I would just note for this area, and there will be other plans of subdivision coming forward in this area in the coming months. There are not yet full municipal services on the north side of Dorchester, north of the Thames River. And so the municipality's wastewater master servicing plan does provide for that and does identify the infrastructure that's necessary. So we get into a bit of a chicken or egg situation. So the municipality has supported this subject to quite a number of extensive draft plan conditions that I've included a version of in my recommendation that would clearly indicate the development of this area can't proceed until full municipal services are provided. And then so full municipal services are required. And then there's conditions that speak to the monetary terms to be addressed between the municipality and the developer and ultimately the other developers in the area. So subject to the provision of full municipal services in this area, I am satisfied that it meets the planning policy tests and I'm recommending approval of both the plan of condominium and subdivision.
Thank you for that report. Again, any comments, questions? I don't see any hands. If I could have a mover and a seconder for the motion as outlined, Councillor Grantham and Councillor Clark, thank you. All in favor? And that is carried. Okay, now 9C7 is the Children's Services 2024-2028 Service Plan, and we report from Cindy Howard.
Through the warden to council. So you can see that Joe and Nadine are actually going to come down and they're going to do the presentation. Before they talk though, I just want to point out there's a bit of a conversation in regards to our agreements with the City of London. As you're going to hear when they do the presentation, this is a great example of us working very closely with the City of London. And the service plan is actually what we've also done with Ontario Works and what we're also looking to do with their housing and homelessness. So when you look at the plan, you'll see the front part of the plan that talks about the entire service, which is London Middlesex. It then outlines London, and then it talks about Middlesex in detail and our community. And then by the end of the plan, it wraps around again and talks about London Middlesex. So it's just, I think, a really good summary of our commitment to working with the City of London. From the provincial point of view, it shows that we work together and it's seamless. And I do want to say a big thank you for the team. They worked really hard with our community, a lot of community outreach, And you're gonna see the success. As you know, childcare has been growing in the county for the last number of years. And it's very exciting to see all these new childcare spaces. And as we talked about recently, we also have some new childcare that's coming to some of our communities attached to our schools. So we're very excited about where the future is going with childcare. And I pass it over to Joe.
Perfect. Thanks very much, Cindy, and for warden to council. I think Greg's going to pull up, I'd like to say a quick presentation. We tried to make it quick, but we will try to go through. I think we have 34 pages, but we will get through them as quick as possible. It's just a general overview of what the service system planning, the steps that we've taken, and just some of the highlights pieces around some data and yeah, some where we're going next and the next steps. So it's my privilege to bring forward the 2024-2028 childcare and earlier system plan. Today I am joined with Nadine Devon, who is the early years project manager, Kelly Smith, who are children's services program support worker, and Oakley Frechette, who is our community programs and data and research analyst for the data guide. The four of us, with support with Cindy, have been working alongside the City of London to create the service system plan together. Today, we have a little bit of a presentation to go over some of the highlights of it. So first piece is the childcare and early years team. I've already introduced Nadine, Kelly, and Oakley. You know Cindy Howard already, and Lindsay Brock, who is the director of library services. Three other individuals who are not listed on there is actually from our finance team. So Marisol Roa, David Kurtz, and Noah Frijon from our finance department. So the overview of the process, sorry, which page are we at? There we are, sorry. Perfect. So we're going over just a little bit of the service system planning process, some demographics and stats, and overview of the CCEY system in Middlesex, and a little bit about what we heard from families, childcare centers, community partners, and finally an overview of the implementation plan. So in 2019, all SSMs, which Bill shared earlier as the service system managers were, or CMSMs, which City of London is our service system manager, were required to develop a service system plan. As Middlesex is contracted to provide the childcare and early years programming in the county, we worked with the City of London to complete the service system plan for the London and Middlesex area. The current plan being presented to council incorporates both the needs of Middlesex County and the City of London, as Cindy has mentioned. Some of the objectives of the planning process. So we needed to complete an environmental scan to kind of see where we are right now, what the current system looks like. We had to determine what is our community planning process going to be, develop an overarching priorities and outcomes, and then finally create the implementation plan that has measurable actions attached to each of the steps. The outcome of the plan, there was 4 provincially mandated pillars: the affordability, access, quality, and responsiveness that we were to incorporate within the plan. Through some work with Fanshawe College and the City of London, Middlesex London included 2 further pillars of relationships and inclusivity, as they were identified as key pillars within our communities. One of the main areas that the plan covers is the access and inclusion, and this was a big piece once the QUELP system, which I'm going to be talking about in a minute, came in. So the access and inclusion framework includes the 7 different indicators, which includes individuals who identify or are Black, Indigenous, Francophone, low income, and or families with children with special needs. I'll go further into it, but this is also a huge part of to how we determine where new childcare centers that will be opened throughout the county and through the City of London as well. So who did we consult? To complete the plan, we consulted with many different community partners, including Middlesex Children's Services Network, licensed childcare providers, Thames Valley District School Board, and the London District Catholic School Board, and families themselves. We wanted to ensure that throughout this plan that we heard the voices from each of our communities and incorporated them into the plan. So some of the general plan development timelines. So we started the work, or at least some of the environmental scan back in March 2023. Nadine, Oakley, and Kelly took the lead on the environmental scan and the community engagement pieces. And we pulled the data together in October, working with the City of London counterparts as well to provide the County Council with a service plan in front of you today. The final plan will be posted on the county's website for everybody to read. Next few slides, we're going to dig into a little bit of the demographics and some stats related to Middlesex County specifically. As you know, and it's been mentioned earlier in council today, the county's population is growing. And with that growing population, we have seen a larger growth in children 0 to 4 years old, who are the fastest growing age grouping within the county. Meaning that we will need more licensed childcare spaces within the county itself and available for families that are in need. Currently, we do have a large wait list for families accessing childcare across the county. One piece that we look at is income inequality. So when we talk about income inequality, the county has actually seen some positive stats where rates of lower income families with children have been decreasing since 2016, and our unemployment rate is currently under the provincial average. Although single parent families who are female led tend to still be at a higher risk of low income, and they account for about 80% of our families in the county. For immigration and cultural diversity, the stats from Stats Canada show that our county has had a small dip in residents who identify as immigrants. Anecdotally, we do know, though, since 2021, the newcomer and immigrant population, has grown. We do need to ensure that we have culturally appropriate and inclusive programming, practices, and trainings that are provided to the childcare workers and are available for families and children at the centers. Indigenous and Francophone. The Indigenous and Francophone communities have increased since 2016 and will continue to grow over the coming years. Nishwaushkagon is a childcare center and early years childcare and early on child and family center, which is located within the City of London, who is currently funded to provide the Indigenous supports to residents both in London and Middlesex. And we actually currently don't offer any specific French language services for childcare or early on programming. So some of where we are now. So currently we have 16 center-based childcare centers, 5 home-based, 2 nursery schools who provide licensed childcare spaces to infants, toddlers, and preschools, and 26 center and school-based centers providing licensed childcare to school-aged children. We are working on opening 1 center in North Middlesex, which will be about 80 spaces, and soon in Lucan and Komoka, which will both have the 88 spaces. So we're excited for those. Licensed childcare itself. So since 2018, we have actually had 6 new centers, adding 746 new more licensed spaces, bringing the total number of licensed spaces to 944 for the 0 to 4 ages spaces and 1,405 for the 4 to 12 year age grouping. As you can see from the chart, though, the infant space are at a premium in the county, as only 5% of the available spaces are available through the current licensed spaces. All right, big piece that came for us was the Canada-wide early years in childcare agreement. This was implemented in March 2022. The agreement has changed how the county has funded childcare centers, and for those individual centers who have signed on to the agreement, including new funding formulas and funding streams for fee reduction, workforce supports, and many more, which I'll show later on in the slideshow. Fees for families have been reduced by 52.75 as of January 1st, which has made childcare much more affordable for families, which is a great thing. Part of when Quilt came in, the directed growth plan. So the director growth plan is underneath the access and inclusion framework. When reviewing those 7 indicators using weighted measurements, the team was able to calculate a priority scoring for each municipality. The priority scores is one of the determinants when approving new centers and where they will be approved to be opened within the county. This is just one of the pieces that we look at when we're determining where the centers can be open. So this, I know that the percentages themselves kind of vary from municipality to municipality, but it is one of the pieces that we do need to look at. Childcare fee subsidy. So with the reduction in fees for families through the QUELP program, we have noticed though that there's a decrease in our need for childcare fee subsidy. It's actually a great thing that that's happening because that means that families are now being able to afford the childcare childcare spaces without additional fee subsidies. We will, though, make sure to keep an eye on it because we want to make sure that it's not a reasoning as that people just don't know about that fee subsidies are still available even with the QUELP program being there. So it is something that we will continue to monitor over the next couple of years. Labor and market workforce. So the workforce in childcare centers has changed drastically over the past few years. Currently, 80% of the staff have less than 3 years experience, and 43 of those have less than 1 year experience. The recruitment and retention of registered ECEs is a huge challenge for our centers. And just as you know, there's not transportation, there's not the same kind of pool of individuals that have their registered ECE as, like, say, the City of London. So overall, though, the licensed childcare staff also earn $2 to $4 less than the Middlesex London average. I will point out, though, that some of this is changing or has changed with the fee optimization funding that's provided through the QUELP program, but it is something that we continue to keep an eye on because we want to make sure that the staff that are in our centers are being paid at the appropriate wage. So from this point, I'm going to pass it over to Nadine to talk about early on.
Thank you, Joe. So as brief background, in 2019, Middlesex County Library assumed direct management of the Middlesex Early On system. At current, we have 4 full-time facilitators and 1 program manager on the team. In terms of funding, in 2023, the City of London received 4.4 million, just under 4.4 million from the province to support early on program delivery in London and Middlesex. The 2023 Middlesex operating budget was just under 400,000. This equates to approximately $64 per child in Middlesex and $132 per child in London. In 2024, additional funding was received to support operations at the River Heights Early On Child and Family Center. But even with this additional funding, Middlesex County continues to receive less funding for early on operations than our neighboring communities, which poses a challenge to service delivery. Currently, in 2023, we had 9 main locations where we offer program across 6 of the 8 municipalities. So pictured here and circled on the map are those locations across the county. In 2024, we are now up to 10 locations where we operate programming with the addition of River Heights. We also offer occasional pop-ups in other locations and municipalities when able. In 2023, we offered approximately 42 hours of programming per week over 5 to 6 days. With the addition of River Heights, we hover around 48 to 50 hours of programming weekly. Listed here is the number of programs offered from 2021 to 2023, showing an increase in the number of programs over this time. You can also see the shift in the types of programs with less virtual and outdoor as priorities changed. This slide shows the number of unique visitors and visits made between 2021 and 2023. And again, as you can see, we are seeing a significant increase in both visits and unique visitors and visits over time.
This is a very detailed slide, but it is intended to show you the reach we have across the county. We had across the county in 2023, listing out the number of programs, the number of unique visitors, and the number of visits. In addition to operating drop-in programs and special programs, the Early On team is also available to support families in facilitating connections to family-centered services. In 2023, the team was involved in over 450 individual consultations, and that is most likely an underestimate. Also in 2023, the team supported over 250 early developmental screens with caregivers.
Okay, back to me. So just to continue on with what our system currently looks like. So for special needs resourcing, through the City of London as well, we contract All Kids Belong. They are a primary provider for Middlesex London to provide, which their mandate is to promote inclusion for all children in all the programming. For quality programming and assistance, so the Strive is through Child Reach. It offers professional development and builds capacity through resources and supports. So talking a little bit about our internal County of Middlesex supports. So we are, as I mentioned, contracted by the City of London to provide childcare and early years programming outside the City of London. Prior to the implementation of QUELP, the county provided supports around wage enhancement grants, the general operating grants, and fee subsidies with occasional one-time funding. Since QUELP, the list of funding streams has increased to include wage optimization, fee reduction, and workforce compensation, to name a few. You look at that chart there on the left-hand side, the administrative supports, that's kind of what the base one is. And then if you look down the right side, the QUELP funding, those are all the different new funding streams that we are supporting through the QUELP program. It's definitely been a busy last couple of years, and to have the understanding and implementation of this new program. And there's more still to come when we learn about the new funding model, which is hopefully expected in 2025.
Back to me. So earlier there was a slide that detailed out how we had engaged with caregivers across the county via an online survey. We had over 600 caregivers that participated in that survey, and we had representation from across all municipalities. So we're just going to give a few highlights of the feedback from the caregiver survey. So in terms of childcare, in summary, families require a variety of care hours. They report experiencing a lack of spaces. They are frustrated with inconsistent waitlist processes. They would like more communication from the center about their child, and they feel that high staff turnover impacts their relationship with the center and their staff's relationship with their children. In terms of early on, families are wanting just more opportunities, additional days in the week, additional opportunities to engage on Saturdays and evenings. They would like to see more opportunities to connect outdoors through some of our outdoor spaces, as well as our very popular program called Open Spaces, which is an outdoor program. They would also like to have available more Indigenous focused opportunities, as well as programs that support social emotional well-being. As well as mentioned earlier by Joe, we facilitated a variety of focus groups with partners. There was pages and pages of qualitative data. And what we did is reviewed all of the data and identified key themes. Those key themes are listed here on the slide for your review.
Okay, well, so this brings us to today and our next steps. So we bring forward the plan to you for your review and approval. The City of London has brought the plan to their Community and Protective Services and will be bringing it to their council in June 2024. The plan if approved, will be posted on our website, as I mentioned before. But we are definitely excited to get things going and to continue the work that has already been started through the implementation plan. So we look at the implementation plan in itself. We have broken it down to 5 different, what we are calling building blocks, which we will be putting into play or putting the action steps into play. So the 5 that local priorities and areas that we are focusing on is the accessibility. So that's increasing the access to early years program to give family and more opportunity to benefit from the high quality early childhood program and services. Inclusion, which is developing inclusive environments for all children and families to be included and connected. Quality, which is the safe and reliable programs built on positive, responsive relationships, engaging environments, and meaningful experiences for the children and families. And as well by the educators and, delivered by the educated and well-supported staff. Collaboration will be building on and creating new relationships and partnerships throughout London and Middlesex. And then the backbone piece is the county administration will support the childcare and early years system through responsive and accountable service system management. So some key action steps across the building blocks that we're going to be looking at is advocating for more funding for our early on and special needs resourcing, providing opportunities for new and innovative ways to expand on the access and inclusion for programming, strengthen our connections with our community partners such as Thames Valley District School Board and the London District Catholic School Board, and of course with our partners at the City of London, and continue to advocate and support our childcare centers to navigate the new funding models and day-to-day challenges that they may see, and to celebrate the successes that we will be achieving and we have achieved over the next 4 years. So on behalf of Cindy, Nadine, Kelly, Oakley, and myself, we thank you for your time today, and we are available for any questions.
That's a really great, comprehensive, integrated report. Thank you very much for that. I'm going to look to council now for questions. I'll start with Deputy Warden Burkhart Jessen.
Thank you. And through the warden, congratulations on what a great overview and the work that you're doing. It constantly amazes me what you're able to do for families and children in our community. So congratulations on that, first off. So just a couple things. I've got 3 points. Just with the Indigenous supports and families from Middlesex having to go into London, specifically to go to the Nashwanonagong Childcare Center. Are we supporting those families to make sure that it is accessible to them? I know maybe travel can be an issue. So I want to make sure that families are being supported in that way. And is there any way anything else we can do to support those families? The second comment, just on the wages of our childcare workers. And again, is there anything that we can do as elected officials to advocate for that? I was particularly concerned with the discrepancy between London and Middlesex. And I guess that's really the question, is what else can we do to support those workers? Because certainly I think that that's a lot of the issue. We have these spaces, we're going to get new spaces, and we have to ensure that we've got the staffs there to support those spaces. So those are my first 2 comments. And then I do have a third one after you guys answer that one.
Perfect. And thank you through Warden to Councillor. So for the Indigenous supports, we'll say that it is something that we have been talking about as a team, as well as how do we support Nashwaashigon to support Middlesex County. And if that isn't something that's available, then how do we make sure that we are going to be getting the funding that we can do our own Indigenous supports within the county? But first off, we want to work with our partners at the City of London and Nashwaashigon to ensure that yes, Middlesex County individuals are represented there. When it comes to the wages piece, I think right now, I'm not sure there's a lot that council can do specifically. With the QUELC program, all wages will be raised up to 2386 for all registered RECEs, which is amazing. Where that does cause issues, which we have heard from some of our centers, is the compression piece. So somebody that's just starting day one gets paid 2386, but somebody that's been there for 5 years or more will also be bumped to that same amount. So it's about trying to figure out what that new funding model is going to be in 2025 and how do we support there. So at that time, if there are some things that we feel as a team that council can do, we'll definitely bring that back forward too.
And then, Warden, I'll probably start to cry. And I don't know, it's because I'm sad or I'm so angry, but it's just the discrepancy in the early on funding. And the only word that comes to mind is it's offensive. It's offensive that our families are not being as treated as equitably as our neighbors in the city of London. And I would really encourage that we continue the advocacy that we've had for the last number of years. We've had this, we've gone to the province so many times. But honestly, these slides, I think are even more jarring than what we have provided the province in past delegations. The work that early on does in our communities with the resources that they have. And it's clear, the statistics that you provided, Nadine, that there is a demand and that there's a want in our communities that this sort of programming be growing. And then to see that in London, children, and I'm going to repeat it just because we cannot, it has to be repeated over and over again. Children in London get $132 and children in Middlesex get 64. Come on. It's just offensive.
Councillor Grantham.
Thank you. And Deputy Warden, I'm going to echo your sentiments because I did write it down. I put a triple line underneath and I didn't think that you use the words offensive, but it is rather jarring. This is the first time as a councillor I've seen those numbers. So you had asked Deputy Warden what we could do as elected officials to change it. So whatever we could do, I don't know what it is, but it is certainly, I'll use your word, it's offensive and somehow it needs to change.
Anyone else? Yes.
Thank you, Madam Warden. Just to change the subject to another demographic. I've gone face to face with industries in Southwest Middlesex, chatting about their most stringent problems. Pena Industries manufacture agricultural products in Glencoe. The biggest problem they have is after-school childcare. It is just extremely burdensome to their employers. They're looking at that individual who is under 12 years old that gets out of school at 3:30, and mom and dad do not get off their shift until 5:30 or 6. They need that after-school childcare. They're looking at counties like Kent County, and they seem to be addressing the problem better than we are. And that I'll give you that example of Pena Industries. I do not have the authority to give you the names of the other two that I had chatted with, but the same problem. Okay. What can we expect in the future? Is that a target that you're addressing? Is there a conversation going on with that type of child?
Thank you. And through the word, Councillor, I will say that, specific in the school age programs, is that a target that we're reaching for at this time? A lot of our focus has been through the QUELC program, which does not include the school age folks. But I think, your comments are not unique to your municipality there. I think it is an issue across the county where school age programming is required. So we have been working with our two larger school age programs that offer services in the county, and we actually have increased some of the school age programs. But what we're again comes back to is around the staffing piece, that we run into issues around finding RECEs that will only work before school and after school programming, which you know, in this day and age to have just a small part-time job, a lot of people can't afford the housing piece and all those other things that to support their own families. So it is something that is on our radar, and it is something that we will be looking at through the next 4 years in this plan.
Thank you, Madam Warden. Just one follow-up. When you look at the schools in some of the rural areas, there is capacity, huge capacity at some of the secondary schools. There's empty classrooms. There's washroom facilities, there are cafeteria facilities, and that is an asset that you should be looking at. And perhaps conversations with the Thames Valley Board of Education would be a great fit for that type of demographic to expand.
Is there anyone else? Go ahead, Cindy.
Thanks to the warden, to the counselor. I would just like to point out that we have had conversations in the past in regards to Thames Valley District School Board about the secondary schools and the capacity there, but more than willing to take that back again and have additional conversations. I'd also like to point out, if you do have some employers that are interested in that, if they can reach out to Joe and the team, and we can make sure we have a good conversation. So we really do understand the scope and gaps that we have in our community as we look forward to how we can address those. Thanks.
Oops, is there anyone else? I just wanted to make one more comment, and you've already heard it, Nadine. This report didn't mention the Huron County number. It did in the library report that we saw earlier today. So the $64 that we get in Middlesex County is less than half the 131 of the City of London. But if you take a county comparison across the board to Huron, they get 196. And that to me speaks to the challenges of delivering service in a rural setting compared to an urban setting. And I think even if we were matched with London, that we would still not be keeping up with our counterparts across Wowsy or other counties in Eastern Ontario. It is different trying to deliver service and pay people a fair living wage in rural areas where transportation costs and all of those other things are a little bit different too. So I'll get off my soapbox now. We do. Oh, sorry. Feel free.
I think just so I can save the phone calls I might get, I think the past warden and the warden will agree with me. And I'm really glad you mentioned that this is a problem we have across the geography, because we often talk about the London example, and I'm glad you broadened it out to other counties. Our fight is not with the City of London, and Kathy probably said that. Oh, you didn't? Okay, well, I'm going to say it again. So you have, but in this context, I'll say it again. Our fight is not with the City of London. This is a provincial issue around funding for non-CMSMs that are in our situation, and we're not a CMSM for this particular service. And this is a gap in the way this model is funded that needs to change. I was going to say over the course of time, but that is backwards. It needs to change a long time ago. So that's just to save me a few phone calls tomorrow. Our fight is not with the City of London, it's with the province of Ontario and how this works.
And I should have prefaced my remark with that because it certainly isn't. Yeah, we all get that. So it's got nothing to do with London. We just need to be treated fairly with counterparts. They need to get the money and we need to work together efficiently. So, okay, so we do have a motion before us. Is as printed. If I could have a mover and a seconder, Councillor Clark and Councillor, I was looking at both of you. I saw Councillor Smyberg first though, so I'll go with that. All in favor? Thank you, and that is carried. Okay, the next section's a little bit convoluted because we do have a change to everything as printed. I'm going to let the clerk take care of making sure that the wording is proper.
Thank you, Madam Warden. Our first resolution would be to consider all the information items excluding 9D35 and 9D36. And
A mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor McGuire and Councillor Robb, thank you. All in favor? And that is carried. And then
Madam Warden, the second resolution would be to consider item 9D35 and 9D36.
oh, sorry, who has a question? It is.
Or what are you wanting to do here?
Any questions? Yes, so why don't you go ahead right now and ask the question? I was concerned about the fact that we have conflicts and I wanted to make sure that we did it properly. But to your point, yes, if there's any comment, go ahead.
Okay, so am I jumping ahead of the class here by going to 9D25? Okay. So this is probably addressed to you, Warden. 9D25 is in reference to a letter crafted from the Warden's Caucus meeting of April the 5th? So you'll notice in there that the 12 small business enterprise centers, none of them are reflected by any of the group around the table here. And Kara, you maybe could speak to it if required, but you know, we're represented by a Community Futures Development Court. Now, I realize there's separate funding. One is provincial and one is federal. But was there any conversation at the table that day of those two groups working together, the CFDC and the small business enterprise centers, irregardless of the fact that the one's provincially funded and one's federally? Was there any conversation around that? I don't know if Kara would have been at that meeting or included in it, or if there, so I guess directed at you, was there a conversation around that, or it was just moving ahead to support the small business?
Not that
enterprise
I'm
center?
aware of, but I wasn't there either.
Oh, okay.
We could try and find out. Oh, Carrie, do you have an answer or suggestion?
Through you, Warden, to the counselor, not with respect to this particular meeting, as I was not at the table for that discussion. I am certainly aware of the lack of funding and lack of additional funding that's being provided for the aspects. In fact, about 2 months ago, I called a meeting with the province along with the representatives to inquire about funding of aspects, particularly one for Middlesex County. At that time, I did not get the answers I was looking for in terms of the reasoning behind the lack of particular funding for aspects or any desire to extend funding for perhaps the creation of a new aspect. However, this is part of the EDC engagement process. The consultants will be looking at the funding and the potential and making additional inquiries.
Okay, so just as a follow-up, so that RFP that went out recently, that will capture, like the report that'll come back will capture that?
Sorry, through you, Warden, to the counselor, with respect to the RFP for the EDC feasibility, this is one of the components that I am asking those consultants to explore.
Great, thank you.
Just to add to that, then the clerk has indicated that they will also look into seeing if anything was just like to follow up on that particular item and see if there's any detail that we can get. Okay, is there anything else before we move on? Okay, so we did call a vote on the one. So we have the two additional items.
If you, Madam Warden, the second resolution would be that item 9D35 and 9D36 be received for information.
And a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Sniper, Councillor Clark, thank you. All in favor? Okay, and that is carried. Okay, now we can move on to 9E, which is a closed session. We have a motion before us, the committee of the whole convening closed session at 3:10 PM in order to consider personal matters about an identifiable individual and labor relations or employee negotiations in accordance with subsections 239(2)B and D. A mover, please, the seconder, Councillor McMillan and Councillor